Hello, podcast listener. This is your host with the most, JJ, coming at you. Amber Parsons is our guest on today's episode, and she helps me make a mug out of clay, out of real clay. I got my hands all dirty during this episode. We get a great conversation with Amber about what it means to create something, what her business is doing, and Tucker and I have a conversation about the creative art studio and some fond memories of construction paper. All of this and so much more on today's episode of JJ Meets World, but first, a quick word from our sponsor. This episode of JJ Meets World is brought to you by Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. Natalie has a proven track record to get your home sold faster and for more money. She is consistently focused on her clients' needs and wants throughout the entire process and make sure that they are well taken care of. If you're looking to buy or sell, reach out to Natalie today. On average, Natalie sells a home every 3.74 days. That's at least 2 a week. And last year, Natalie earned her clients on average over $4,000 above list price on their homes. And you don't have to take our word for it. Here's some of the great reviews Natalie has received. I was overwhelmingly impressed with Natalie and all the Hatch team. She was very responsive and responded to all of the emails within an hour. She gave great advice and encouragement from the listing and pictures, the offer, and all the closing details. The marketing team knew exactly how to promote my property, and I was pleased by how soon and easily my property received an offer. I was actually dreading selling my condo, and Natalie did such an awesome job that I felt like I really didn't need to do anything. The thing I most appreciated was that she really listened to what I wanted to do and respected my decisions. I would definitely recommend Natalie and all the Hatch Realty team. They made this process so wonderful. That was from Diane. So listen, if you're in the mood to buy or sell a home, give Natalie a call right now. You can reach her at 701-388-9338. Natalie, Natalie, at hatchrealtyfm.com, or you can go to livefargomoorhead.com. That's livefargomoorhead.com and find out some information. Huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring JJ Meets World.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirls as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
Today's episode of JJ Meets World deals with creation. And no, don't get out your Bible. I'm talking about creating something, a thing, a craft, something you take with your hands and you make. So, full disclosure, I'm one of those people that if I decide, you know what, I'm really interested, I think I want to try painting, I will go to a craft or hobby store and I will grab a canvas and I'll grab a little bit of paint and I'll grab a brush, and then I'll be standing in line and I'll go like, you know what I really need is an easel. So I'll go back into the store and I'll find an easel somewhere. And I'll think, hey, wait a minute, maybe I should get one of those things that they always show painters having. It's like a piece of wood that's kind of almost half circular where you could put all the dollops of paint on it. And before you know it, I have now loaded up and I have what a professional painter would have in their studio. But that's not the way that you need to start these things. And it's not just that. The same thing happens when I want to just put my whole self into something. I remember I wanted really good audio, and so I was like, I'm going to get a home theater system, but then I wanted to get one that had racks on it, and then I wanted to upgrade my television, and before you know it, the idea of like having this cool home theater system now is, 7 different inputs, and it's all flowing every place.
Right, it's like a hobby creep or whatever.
Yeah.
You think you're interested in one thing, and then it's going to lead you down a path that you didn't see.
It reminds me of the old Goofy cartoons. If you ever saw the one like where it's Goofy getting fit, and it's done by a voiceover like, our man wants to get himself in shape. And so Goofy will go to the store and he'll, mean to buy a dumbbell, but he buys a whole home gym that he doesn't know how to set up.
Right.
And it honestly is the first hurdle I put in front of myself to actually trying something like this.
Right.
So I haven't worked with clay since since I was a kid, and I was using modeling clay back then. No, that's not true. I went to Claire Barton Elementary in Fargo, North Dakota that had the creative art studio. And so we got to use that a lot because we didn't have to get in a bus.
Right.
And so that was the last time I probably worked with clay and fired something. I made a clay face where the tongue was sticking out and the tongue broke off in my backpack. But my mom, bless her soul, held on to that thing forever, even with the broken tongue. We sometimes assume that things like working with clay is meant for artists or children, and it's not. It's meant for everybody. We just have to embrace the fact. It's like you don't need to drive a car to know how to do an oil change. That is a horrible analogy, but you
probably should.
Some have followed. Yeah, right. Like
you probably should.
But I'm just saying, like, you don't need to know how to drive a car. You don't have to be old enough to drive a car to know how to do an oil change. But it helps. It helps.
Not even editing this out. I'm leaving this in.
Yeah, no. Amber Parsons is our guest today. She runs Midwest Mud. And since the last time we had her on the podcast, things have changed pretty drastically for her business. She took a lump of clay that got smashed and turned something beautiful out of it. So I'm going to let her tell that story. And in this episode, I create a mug. Like, she walks me through the steps and she allows me to make my own mistakes, and she teaches me a brand new skill. I had a lot of fun doing this. I can't wait to see the mug in its finished form. Don't worry, we'll post it on our social medias. I think that you guys are really going to dig this. And also just kind of a fun conversation, because in this, for the first time ever, we're doing something on this podcast and talking about it, but also finding out like where the conversation goes while we're does that make sense?
Yeah,
where it's not just us sitting here talking, it's us sitting here and having an activity.
As I was listening to the two of you talk, it definitely helped unlock conversation, right? It was sort of a great conversation starter and conversation focus, and apparently doing things like this is good therapy, because I think a lot of therapy happens in this episode too.
Oh, without a doubt. In fact, I bring myself out of my comfort zone, which, if you can believe it, it exists.
There is one.
There.
He does have one.
Yep, I do have a comfort zone, and I go out of it in this episode.
It's not just like restricted to condiments he doesn't like. There's other things too.
Absolutely correct. So I hope that you guys really enjoy this episode. It was a lot of fun, and go out and create something after you listen to this.
JJ Meets World.
Amber, welcome back to JJ Meets World.
Yeah.
This is exciting to have you back, especially because in front of me, I'm going to describe what I am seeing. There's newspaper on top of a table, which is the universal indication that crafts are about to happen, right?
Yeah,
or we're
absolutely.
training a puppy.
Or we're training a puppy. Or if your son thinks that he's a cat, like,
Yeah.
which my son does.
Last time we spoke, we were both artists in residence at Apt, and things have changed drastically for both of us. We're in our new studio, and you have expanded your business in probably something you never even thought was going to happen.
Yeah. It's just, I've gone through multiple studio spaces, and whenever I get a new studio space, like at first, or like things change like that, you feel like, I don't know, you feel out of sorts and stuff. And then what I realize is you just have to like face it and look at it as a clean slate and look at new opportunities and see how you want it to work. It's like when things crumble down, you can rebuild and build it into what you want.
And so after you left App, how has your rebuilding been?
Well, I became a rogue. Like art on a cart, kind of, I guess.
Art in a cart.
Realistically, that's kind of what I am. So I come to different businesses. I always am seeking out new businesses, but now that I've become so popular, people have been seeking me out. I go from business to business, bringing all of the materials to make an item. And then I take it back to my studio, fire it, and then they get to pick it up in about like 2 to 3 weeks.
So rather than trying to get people to congregate in one spot, you're now going to them. And so I imagine that when they're already congregating in a spot that they're used to, it's much easier to build those class sizes.
Oh, yeah. I sell out 30 people. Like usually my max is about 30 people, which is crazy because when I think about 30 people, it seems like a lot, but it just doesn't. It's like, I think all my serving skills and working at bars and like that skill comes into play. So I'm able to handle 30 people, no problem. Yeah.
So we were talking briefly before we turned the mics on, and I said, "Oh, do you fire these things in the kiln?" Walk me through the kiln process for let's say a mug.
Okay. So usually it depends on like what color choices. I've been really wanting to give people different color options because not everybody likes blue. But so what I do is I fire it. It becomes, before I fire it, I wipe everything down so that it's not, there's no burrs or anything like that. So it looks really nice and professional. And then I put an underglaze on. I have to wipe it off, which is actually quite a process. And then I dip it into glaze and I fire it again. I have a class that's coming up at Proof, which I'm really excited about. It's a mugshot mug class. So that's actually one more step. So I take people's photos in a photo booth and they get to pick out whatever their crime was. And then I take that photo and then after I fired it and glazed it, then I put their picture on it and I fire it again. So it's another step.
Oh, wow.
So it's just kind of fun to like give people, like when people think of clay or ceramics, they think of the painting of ceramics, but this is actually like a whole nother process of ceramics.
The kiln itself, I mean, is it something you plug in? Do you shove logs underneath?
Well, there are a bunch of different types of kilns. Like there is a wood kiln. I don't have a wood kiln, but that would be so cool. I have an electric kiln. It's like a big oven. It's just like, it looks like a little space pod kind of. And then you have to load the kiln and then you put shelves on, you load another, like you just kind of build up layers and then you shut the lid, you set the kiln. I'm fortunate enough to have gotten a digital electric kiln. So I basically set it and forget it. But there are always things that happen with the kiln. Like if it's drawing too much power, it'll air out and you have to problem solve and things like that. Make sure like the coils and stuff are working properly. And
what, where do you have to put in your garage?
We have a shop. I live out in the country. So
nice.
Yeah, my husband has a shop, which he's allowed me to have a small amount of space.
A little
this
corner. This is Amber's corner over here.
This is my corner. This is where I fire stuff. But I'm really fortunate to be able to have that. So, because finding a space in town or a studio space or a building that will allow you to have that is actually kind of a hard thing to do because doing the electrical and stuff is expensive.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, because you're probably dealing with like the same thing that you plug like a dryer into,
yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that cord is so thick.
It is.
And the thicker the cord, the more expensive it's going to be.
Yeah, it's a 240 volt. And then you have to like figure out amperage and yeah. Like I've had multiple spaces where like the power and the kiln didn't match up. So you have to like, your kiln doesn't get to temperature all the time. And that's a real bummer when that happens. So at my space now, it's all set up properly and it takes a lot of stress out of the whole situation.
So when I make baked macaroni and cheese at home, if my oven, like if it doesn't preheat right or whatever, I just leave it in for a little while longer.
Yeah.
If your kiln doesn't get to the right temperature, do you just have to keep it in there longer, or does it really like the process needs to be a certain amount of heat for a certain amount of time?
Well, there was a space that I was at, and there are ways that you can kind of get around it. So I had a kiln that it wasn't getting to temperature, but so all I did was I programmed it so it would hold that temperature for 2 more extra hours. So you have to hit a certain melting point. Like glazes are rated at different melting points. And I go to cone 6. And so my kiln was only firing to cone 4. So I just held it for an extra 2 hours. And luckily the glaze that I am using is very forgiving. So it was able to melt to the proper.
What about the fact that your kiln is located at your home? Is it hard to say, okay, I am not working right now, I am home right now, versus I'm working right now. I'm not at home.
What's really funny about that is that I do part-time daycare.
Oh my.
So while the kids are napping, I just go down to my studio and I'm a very, when I'm under stress, I work like mad. And
you thrive in chaos?
I totally thrive in chaos. And so like while they're napping, I will do the things that I need to do, load the kiln. It's been actually really great to have my stuff out at home because like I can take those moments and be like, okay, I got to get this done instead of driving into town trying to do everything. Sometimes, so like I always save all my tools after class for my children to wash because it's like a really good job for them. They just sit and they wash it, or like, like you just give them a task if they're awake or you need to get something done. You just like Jedi mind trick them into like thinking it's a really good time, but they're really doing something for you.
Tom Sawyer gets all of his friends to whitewash the fence.
I'm totally Tom Sawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you're the Tom Sawyer. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Next thing you got to do is you got to find buried gold.
Oh my God,
that'll be the next step.
I think I need to do that. Yeah, I'm gonna just start digging holes. Yeah,
I've always thought it seems like in all these books that there's treasure buried everywhere, but no one's really finding it in the 21st century.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it depends on what you define as treasure.
Ooh, there
snap.
you go. Right, right. Because it could be a vintage pair of jeans. That's treasure.
And you're like, I love these jeans.
So you talked about tools too. What's the weirdest tool you've found over the years? For example, I just talked to these two guys, brothers in Minnesota, who make these giant snow sculptures in their front yard for fun. And I said, what's the oddest tool that you had? And he goes, oh, one of us took a bowl and put a strap on it. So we've got these like bowl hand things that we can make to make these giant snowballs for when we're forming the initial structure. And he goes, it's a tool we couldn't do this without, and we didn't even think about it. So bowls. He's like, bowls are the things that helped us.
You know what is really funny? I was just telling Tucker about this. So like, I'm a shape seer, and like that's what I call myself.
I'm a shapeshifter.
I'm a shapeshifter.
Sure. So you see like what I would see is a mound of clay, and you see something in it. Is that what you're talking about? Well,
actually, what I'm saying is like I am always like I have a problem. Like, okay, for example, I was telling Tucker about this. I went to a class at Rick's Bar, and I forgot to bring the PVC pipe, and which is like the essential part of making the mug. And I was like, okay, I like had cold sweats, and I was like, how am I going to get around this? Because they cannot make a mug without the PVC pipe. And like I just had them keep on like doing their thing, and I was looking and scanning the room, and I was like, oh, solo cups. I was like, we're going to use solo cups. So I just got a bunch of solo cups, and I like taught myself how I was going to teach them in the moment, and then it just they all turned out beautiful. Like it was just interesting. That happens all the time for me. Like when I go to thrift stores, I never look at anything as what they're supposed to be used for. I like am always thinking outside the box.
Are you always thinking I could put clay on the outside of that?
Yeah, like basically. My children, like when I started having kids and like all their toys, I was like, oh, that would make a great texture. Like, yeah, I have like hordes of things, and my husband thinks it's all junk, but it's like, no, that's like I can use that. Like I save all of the oatmeal containers because I'm just going to, I don't know what it's going to do, but I'm just going to use it later. I know I'm going to use it. So I have hordes of things like that at my house.
Have you ever made something that has the purpose of being destroyed later on? For example, a piggy bank.
Oh, that's a really fun idea.
I'm always interested because, we make something with the intent of it being there. We hardly ever make something with the intent of it being destroyed at one point.
You just gave me an idea. Like, I'm going to totally do that now.
Awesome. There you go.
Yeah,
we're actually dealing with that at Theater B at this very, very moment.
Yeah.
So the play that's coming up, The Roommate, there's a prop in it where one of the characters has a full box of porcelain dolls, and like 20 of these get smashed on the floor in front of the audience like every night. And so Monika Brown-Ecker, who's been on the show before, who's our props master, she's had to research like all these various ways of like cheaply making a ton, not actual porcelain, but of dolls that will just be crushed every single night. And so basically we're going to have like a doll making party.
That's awesome.
For a weekend at Theater B because of that.
Sounds like something your grandmother would love.
Oh, Mama Luke would be all over that.
Tucker's grandmother makes these porcelain dolls. She's the only other person I know who owns a kiln.
Yeah.
She has, at least not anymore. Now that she's in assisted living now, she doesn't have it. But growing up, she always had the doll room.
So I get like the what you're talking about is what I was saying that people think about.
Yeah.
Clay. Like they think ceramics is that. Because back in the 70s, that was like a really popular thing, and like to me, that's not clay or ceramics to me, even though it is totally. But like we call it grandmaware or
Totally.
or scratch and bake.
Totally.
Because you have to scratch the seam off and then you bake it and then you paint it. And I'm actually getting into that. My friend Jenny, we're starting to get into, because we have all these molds that people have, like they're heavy and people don't know what to do with it. And their grandma had a whole bunch of them. And so I've like collected a bunch. We actually got Star Wars, like a whole set of Star Wars. And we're going to do Star Wars themed like painting, like a painting party, grandmaware party. Yeah. And so we're getting Yoda. Awesome. I have R2D2 and all the characters. I think it's going to be a great class.
Oh, that's exciting and very timely too.
Yes, it is very timely. But back to your question about like making things with the intent of breaking them. I've never really done that, which it is a like, so like when you're in studio and you're at when I was at MSUM, like it was really liberating when you made something. And a lot of the time when you open up the kiln, like you don't know exactly how it's going to turn out because there's so many chemical things happening. Sometimes things just don't turn out the way you want them. And then you don't want your mom to steal them. So, which my mom digs through the garbage and takes all the crappy ceramics that I've made. But so like just like throwing it and smashing it and that noise is just like this awesome thing, and just like letting things go. Or even when I'm teaching class, one time I had this, I have a lot of like A-type personalities that take my class and they want everything to be really perfect and smooth. And sometimes when you're like trying to make things perfect and smooth, it actually makes it worse. And so I had this, I was teaching the Montessori kids, and there was this little boy and he just couldn't make this project the right way. So I was like, you know what, let's just smush it. Like, we're just going to smush it. And then we're going to start over because now you've learned all these things and now you can start over and make it better. Like, and I've also had, like, I just told this story to this lady and she's having a hard time with her mug. And she's like, can you help me with that? And I was like, I looked at her and she's like, don't smush it. And I was like, we're smushing it. and then I just sang, let it go, let it go.
That is a hard thing though. So as we get into this project, I am somebody who can see something in their mind, but I can't make my hands do it.
Yeah.
I've never been able to draw. I've never been able to paint. When I start to paint, I'm like, okay, here we go. And then I'm like, oh, but I want some more blue up there. And then before you know it, it's like 3 inches thick with paint on it.
Yeah.
And it just looks like garbage. There's an episode of the show Malcolm in the Middle that is amazing, where the dad gets fired and he says he wants to paint this painting he's been seeing for years. And so he starts painting it and it gets beyond him. Yeah. And, they're like, it looks like garbage. Like, I don't know what's going on. And at one point, the paint actually, like, it's so thick, it peels off the canvas, like, onto him.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is what takes, when I try and make something that would be considered like a traditional visual art, that's what I end up with. So if I'm supposed to be making flowers, I make one too big and the other one, and I get disappointed in myself while I'm making it. So it's hard for me. I feel for that little kid in that Montessori class, because wanting to get what's in your mind out can be really difficult. And I think it's a skill set that certain people have. My mother had it, and she kept glass. Like when a glass would break, she'd keep a chunk of it for years. And we had this weird bin in the basement that was just full of old dishes and weird stuff. Well, she made a mosaic. It took her 20 years to collect everything she needed, but then she made a mosaic out of it. And then you go like, oh my God, I never even like thought about that.
Yeah. Well, it's patience. You have to have patience with yourself, and you have to be cool with failure. Like when I think about my kids, like my oldest daughter, she really wants everything to be really perfect and she wants to win all the time. But like, you're not really winning if you win all the time, because if you are failing constantly, you're learning how to be better. You know, like you're really learning more experience from, like when I make something and I think that it just sucks, sometimes I'll just be like, okay, just need to leave it. And then I come back to it in the morning and then I see actually what I was doing. And I just tweak it more and more. And then sometimes you just let it be what it is, you know, like just be okay with it not being perfect, because maybe imperfection is perfection.
Okay, remind me of that as we go along in this.
Yes.
Okay, so in front of us, we've got newspaper on the table.
Yeah.
You have a little bin full of tongue depressors and brushes and plastic utensils. There's a couple of sponges, and you've got a piece of paper and some plastic.
Yes.
What are we doing?
Okay, so I brought a mug sample.
Okay.
So we're going to be using this PVC pipe to create the shape. So this is a beer stein. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the walls and the handle. I actually am silly and I forgot to prep out the bottom. So we're not going to be attaching the bottom part. So we're just going to focus on the walls and the handle, and then I'll put your bottom on. I'll put your bottom on later.
How do you make sure that it's waterproof or like leak proof?
Okay, so what you do is when I put so we're gonna wrap this PVC pipe with the clay,
Okay.
right? And then actually first we're gonna wrap, and I might have you do this now. So
Okay.
I'm gonna have you wrap this PVC pipe with the paper.
Okay.
And so this paper is gonna act as kind of like a slip so that the clay doesn't stick to the PVC pipe.
Okay.
It's important that this isn't too tight or too loose. So I'm going to have you go ahead and wrap that.
Okay.
And then you're going to just take a little piece of tape and then just tape the paper to the paper. And so what I usually have people do is, like, after we texture and we build, then you have another little separate square of clay. And then you put your piece on that separate piece of clay. And then we cut around the bottom. And then once that bottom is cut out, it looks really rough when you have that, when you're cutting out that bottom piece. But I just take a sponge and we just wipe it and push it all together. And then if there's really good connection on the bottom and the top, you're not going to have any leakage.
Okay.
So, and then also the glaze in the inside is going to,
Form another
seal it.
barrier.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes. So, okay, here is our clay slab.
Where do you get massive amounts of clay?
Well-
do you have like a clay guy?
The Plains Art Museum has been my clay guy
Yeah?
right at the moment, which is super awesome. They have recycled clay, so they take all the scraps from the nice clay and they put it into a big bin, and then they let it soak in a bunch of water, and then they reconstitute it, and then they put it in what's called a pug mill, and a pug mill takes out any air bubbles, and you get these big long logs of clay.
So this is the hot dog of clay.
This is the hot dog of clay. Yeah,
Sure,
the
okay,
bologna.
uh-huh,
This is maybe more bologna because it's flat. But so then I take those pieces and I have a slab roller at home, and so I roll out all of the slabs, and that's why there's this texture on the clay like this. So
Okay.
the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our popsicle stick, and you're just going to smooth away that texture, because if you leave it on there and I rub underglaze onto it, it'll look like a pair of pants. So if you want a pants mug, then just don't do anything. But I
Sure.
don't know if you want pants
No,
mug,
I don't want
so-
pants mug.
Okay, so go ahead and smooth this side out and then the other side. So when you're smoothing, it's a lot like spackling. If you've ever done any spackling or anything like that.
A bit of spackling.
Yeah, so it's a lot like that. You just want to make sure like all of that texture is gone, and then we're going to flip it over and we're going to do the other side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it matter the direction I do this?
Usually I go like one direction all the way across, and this is just how I do it. There's so many ways you can work on stuff, but yeah, I usually just smooth. You don't want to over smooth either, because sometimes what people will do is they're gonna like take the tongue depressor and then they press really hard, and then as you're doing that, you're like compressing all the molecules and you're spreading everything out, and then
I'm compressing the molecules.
Yeah, and so as you're compressing, you're making everything stronger, but then you're also exposing it to more air. And clay is a lot like skin, I would say, and it will get dried out, and then when we go to shape it, it's going to crack, and then you're going to freak out, and the world's going to end. Yeah.
I assume you've had some people freak out.
Yes, I've had some people freak out, and it's really funny because I'm just like, I just Bob Ross it. We'll fix it.
Okay, so what's it like to...
See, that was a man, though, who there were days where I felt like he was screaming on the inside.
I was just going to say that. Like, yeah, I feel like, yes, you do scream on the inside, but you have to keep it Bob Rossi on the outside.
I just read an article about how apparently a lot of plants scream when they're under stress, and it's like a frequency of sound that our ears can't pick up, but that they emit. I wonder if clay screams as you scrape it like this.
Yes, it's like, I wonder if it's like a scream like we think of screaming, or is it like a completely different sound?
Right.
Like, I think of like a goat scream, but that's probably not what Clay's doing.
Yeah, maybe it's like...
Sounds like jazz.
Yeah. Maybe it's like the sound of jazz.
Yeah, when JJ gets home at night, he pours a tumbler of Kool-Aid and puts on some goat screaming.
Yep.
Slides into his giant jacuzzi.
I kind of want maybe to get a screaming goat because it would drown out the screaming of my children. Right. And it would then somehow the screaming of my children would just... Like, if I just imagined a goat scream every time, I would just think it was just a little bit more funny.
There was a style of parenting for a while where you were supposed to, when your children cried, you were supposed to cry back at them. And I always thought that was ridiculous. And then I saw the movie Midsommar this last year, and I'm like, oh, that's exactly what the premise of this movie is. Everyone's screaming at each other. Oh, man. I've been actually, so my middle child, I've been having a lot of issues with because she's a very emotional human. Mm-hmm. And I'm also an emotional human. So we are pushing each other's buttons. But she makes this noise at me all the time. And I just tell her, I was like, you seriously? Yesterday, she did it for hours. She's just making this noise and there's nothing I can do to stop her from doing it. And I am just I need you to just step away from me. Because I'm plant screaming on the inside. Aww.
and actually I just had to get into my car and I was I told my husband I was going to leave for an hour, but I didn't. I just needed to leave for a second because I was my brain is having aneurysms on the inside. I can't take it anymore. But
isn't communication so weird and how everyone does it just a little bit differently? But we need survival is communication. Yeah. They say mankind really thrived when we got fire. I disagree. I think mankind started to thrive when we were able to say things like, I'm too hot.
I'm too hot. Oh, yeah. I've been trying to teach my son because he also screams at me a lot. And I just was no, I'm not going to have another screamer. And he likes monster trucks, or he's just been screaming at me for milk or whatever it is. And I was I will do it when you stop screaming at me. As you can ask me nice. and it actually, so then he'll be have milk, please. And this weird desperation. And it's just, I don't know. It is interesting to you have to teach communication, mm-hmm. You have to teach them to communicate and also teach yourself to communicate with them. Because I, a lot of the times I'll be oh, I sucked at parenting today. But you have to think, I'm also learning, through the whole process. Because I was my child who does, I was her when I was a child. And I understand, but it's really hard to understand and also act the way that I'm supposed to act.
Just sounds like a silverback gorilla.
Yeah, it's really, I felt bad because I did take a video of her doing this and I sent it on Snapchat to my family. And I was what do I do? But then I felt I was I don't know, exposing her in this weird way, which is a strange thing. I don't know, I felt guilty about it after I did it.
A paparazzo?
Yeah, I'm not respecting her in a way, maybe, I don't know. I don't know if that's true, but I overthink everything, so... But only after the fact.
Well, right, I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to brood about it.
Right, I do that all the time, and... it's interesting. You act out and it's hard to act appropriately in the moment, but it's not until after you you're like, okay, stop. You just got to stop.
So I'm already looking at this thing
Yeah.
and like being like, oh, this doesn't look really good right here. And like, oh, there's a little like pop mark over there. Am I overthinking these?
Just let it go.
Just let it go.
Just let it go.
Letting it go. It's going to be a great mug.
It's going to be a great mug because you're not going to notice all these things. And also we're going to texture over top of it. So just pretend like you just don't care so much about it. Like you're just in the act.
I tiled a bathroom in my own home once.
Boy. Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, it looks great. Good job. And I look at it and I'm like, oh my God, look, this one's got to be at least 1/8 of an inch off. And see how this one's kind of like chipped on the side? Nobody
Everybody
notices
does
it, right?
Everybody thinks that way.
Okay.
Like I was part of a show at the Plains Art Museum with all these other ceramic artists, and I hated my piece. Hated it a whole bunch. And I felt like it wasn't a great representation of myself or my skills. And then it was, they had a promo photo, and it was like front and center. Like that almost was worse, but it also was validating at the same
Sure.
time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, okay. So next, I'm going to let you choose. So I bring this hoarding of texture tools to all my classes. Oh, yeah. Sorry. It's hard for me to just.
Right. It's hard to be locked down in one spot while you're trying to teach me.
Yeah. Okay. So we have these cool little rolly guys. The stencils are kind of my faves. But you can layer texture. So I always go with my favorite piece. I don't know. I'm really into this like Art Nouveau kind of style right now. So you're going to put the stencil down.
Okay.
And you don't have to choose that stencil. I'll let you choose whatever you want. And then just like when we were smoothing, you're just going to smooth this, and I'll just do a little part until that stencil becomes flush.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And then you pull it away, and then there it is. Okay. Let's say I hate that.
Okay.
I just smooth it away. It's not a big deal. It's just not. And then I'm ruining your perfect.
Nope.
Smoothing.
I don't care.
Yeah, you don't care about it.
Yeah, I'm never going to notice. It's going to be a beautiful mug.
It's going to be beautiful. It could be the inside. No, it won't be the inside.
So here's an interesting question. Mm-hmm. Do you ever look at a piece of clay and feel like this is the outside side?
Well,
like we smooth both sides. But do you ever have a moment where you're like, this one is the one that's going to be on the outside?
Yeah, well, you do, because like that would be like editing, like so you do choose which side do I want to be on the outside. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Just because like maybe you want to hide something. Be sneaky about it. I don't know. You put it on the inside, or maybe like I don't like this where the seam is, or I don't like this part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my handle right there, so it's not like right front and center, or like I will just build and texture over it. A lot of the time when I'm making something and like I really hate how it looks, I just like keep on building on that part, so that way I just am hiding it. Yeah.
Interesting.
So these are I use a lot of like cake decorating tools in my work. So like with this, you're just gonna press down until it kind of sinks into the clay, and then you pull it away, and then you push down harder than that. Yeah, and then you have a little texture. But I'm gonna let you look through this.
Okay.
And you choose which.
I already have some feelings.
You got feelings.
I
I
do,
like it.
yep.
Feelings are so good.
So here's something. There's this one that's kind of wavy, and it reminds me of like a symbol for wind.
Yeah.
And then there's this awesome little hot air balloon. Could I do something where I run this wavy thing across the whole thing, and then I imprint the hot air balloon along with it?
The possibilities are endless.
Awesome.
Is
That's
that,
what I'm gonna
is
do.
that the Charlie Brown zigzag?
Yeah, it's like the Chevron of Charlie Brown. I don't know.
I think we have the episode title.
The Chevron of Charlie Brown. I feel like that's a.
It's either that or.
Yeah.
So this box of textures, is this something you collect as well? Like whenever you see something like, oh yeah, that'd be perfect.
Yes, I do. I have I just have, like I said, just a hoarding. Sometimes, so when I first started doing clay, I would go to, I went to a grave, or, like a graveyard. Mm-hmm. And then like on the headstones, there's all these cool textures. Yeah. So I press clay into it, and then you fire it, and then you can use it as a stamp. Like the texture on the bottom of shoes. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, I really like that texture, so I want to steal that.
So you're constantly collecting textures as well.
Yes.
Okay. So looking at this, so this gets wrapped around the PVC pipe, Should I be texturing the whole thing, part of it, or is that completely up to like?
Okay, so it's really up to you. But think about it. You're going to be lifting it up. So like, look at it this way. Mm-hmm. So like maybe, do you want the hot air balloons to be on the top? And now I'm like totally directing you on as to what I would do. Mm-hmm. But like hot air balloons on the top, maybe do that texture on the bottom, or like not even all the way to the bottom, but like so that it looks like it's in the air and like going in the middle a little bit.
We really want a Last Airbender theme.
Yeah. And you need like maybe some overlap with the hot air balloon. I'm just saying. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm thinking. The zigzag is consistent across it, but the hot air balloon kind of goes wherever.
Yes.
Right.
It's a free spirit.
All right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put this on here.
You're going to press down and roll. You're going to press really hard because the clay is a little bit on the dry side. Yeah. Liking it.
My shoulder's rubbing against the mic. Tucker, you're going to have to take care of that.
My shoulder's rubbing against the mic, too.
My shoulder's rubbing in other places, but I'm not going to talk about it.
That's a flexible shoulder.
It's a really flexible shoulder.
Okay, so now I have the beginning. Now I'm using like a little stamp. Like this is what my sister got into stamping when she was like 9 years old. So we had a billion stamps and like the hot gun so that, glue would dry or whatever.
Yeah.
So how hard am I pushing this in?
You don't want to press it so that like the texture goes all the way through, but you want to press pretty hard because this clay is dry.
Okay.
So yeah, that looks good. Boom. Look at that hot air balloon. I like it.
Oh, see, did I get that one too deep?
Nope, that's fine.
Okay.
And so like the variation of like depth is going to determine how blue things are as well. So
okay.
I just told you I'm going to make it blue because I just like the blue color. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I might even do one more here because we're going to cut something like this whole slab isn't going to be used. So perfect. Okay. So then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to flip it over so it's texture side down. When you flip it over, make sure there's no crumbs or anything because they will get stuck into this really lovely pattern that you've created here.
No crumbs.
No crumbs.
So it's a good thing I wasn't eating a breakfast burrito while we were doing this.
Yeah. I mean, that would burn away, but it would leave a texture.
Do you ever work with food, like pushing food into stuff?
I haven't, but I could. So many ideas you're giving me. I feel like we'll have to JJ trademark it when I'll just say TM JJ's Meat World. Okay, so the other thing is we want to make sure that we have the right, so we want this to be the top. Okay. So I'm going to turn it towards you.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So that's the top. Okay, so now like there are some inconsistencies around the edges. And what I usually have people do is just wipe those away. So that way we're not, so if I fire this, like this would cut you. Okay. Like it's soft now.
A burr edge.
Yes, right. And I was doing a bacon and beer fest, and I'd made all these bacon beer steins, and one of them I wasn't doing a great job at like making sure everything was nice and soft or like polished, and one person got cut, and that was like the worst feeling in the world. So yeah, we'll just take the sponge and we're just gonna wipe that edge.
I also desperately want to clean up. Like I want to take these little pieces away and be like, okay, that's for the garbage there.
Yeah, usually I have like a little like bowl where people put all those little crumblies because I try when I teach at other people's places, I want to make sure that we're not getting clay everywhere because clay dust is the worst and infiltrates all parts of your life. And so yeah, I'm really careful about that generally. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is we're going to take your PVC pipe.
Okay.
And so you need to decide. So this is not going to be, you're not going to be using this whole slab.
Okay.
So when we roll this, and I'm going to tighten this guy up just a little bit.
Didn't get it tight enough.
It's not tight enough.
See, that's your instruction was not too loose, but not too tight. And so the whole time you kept talking about other things. I have no idea what you were saying because I was concentrating so hard on
what
is my paper tight enough, not tight enough. So when I listen back to this podcast, I'll be able to be like, oh, that's what she was saying.
That's what she's saying. So you want to be able to like, it needs to slide, but not just fall off.
Okay.
Okay. So then we're going to, and can I move this mic a little bit? Okay. So you want to match up the bottom of the PVC pipe and the paper. So make sure that they're flush because if it's out a little bit, then you're just not going to make contact. The PVC pipe and the clay bottom wouldn't make contact. But so we're going to roll it on here, and you want to have just like a little tiny bit of overlap, like see how it's just a little bit longer. And then we're just going to roll it and mark it with a B until the clay touches the clay. Okay. And so that's how much, like you're going to know how far or where to cut this extra slab off. So where it's touching, I'm just going to roll it a little tighter. You're just going to make a mark right there where it's touching.
Okay. Like kind on the outside, like, on the inside?
On the outside so that we have just a little bit of overlap. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so now that's our mark. So now you're going to cut it like a piece of cheese right down the center. And I'll just pre-make the little line for you. So you,
good. So it's straight?
So it's straight, yeah.
Jade is going to cut the cheese.
Cut the cheese.
I feel like, and now that the new office is open, we can all enjoy cake.
He's doing a really good job.
I don't know why, but I felt that as you did it.
Did you?
Yeah, like you were like operating or something.
It's a satisfying like, press, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, there is.
I think we all got something out of watching that.
Yeah, can we do it again? Like we're going to watch it over and over and over again. Yeah. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to roll this back. Actually, before we do that, let's take our little, so like the way you join clay together is you slip and you score. So I always say slip and score, and then I score things, and then I do slip, which is weird. I don't know why I can't say it the other way. It's just that's how it is. But so we're going to just mark up these edges, the two parts that are going to be touching. So the inside of one side, the outside of the other.
And it gives it just like a little texture? Or?
Yep, a texture. So that way we're going to use this water, and we're going to create slip. And then you're just going to, this is a very damp sponge, and see how it just creates this film, that slip. So, and it's like basically like clay glue. And then we're going to roll it back onto itself. And then we press down, and then we'll lift it up. So, I just want to make sure, because it was a very strange angle that we did this at.
Do a lot of people ask for creative help, or I mean, obviously you want to give them technical help, but is it hard to not tell people like, oh, well, you should do this and let them do their own thing? Well,
yeah, sometimes like, especially when I'm doing something where we're going to make faces or something, like when I was doing the gnome class, be like, I want to make a dog, and like they'd have their idea of how they're going to do it, and it was completely different than my idea, but I really loved that I got to learn from them, like what is in their mind. So I have to take what's in their mind, and then I have to like help them manifest it. So I always let them have the idea, but then I will help them like figure out the technicalities. Like, sure. But generally if they ask me, I don't know what to do. I was like, well, it's your project. So just do whatever you feel, do what you want. Okay. So we have this is going to be our, the walls of the beer stein. What we can do now is I'm just going to wipe down this seam. Usually I just leave the seam because it's handmade, like some people are not cool with that. They want it to be flush. We can make it flush, but I don't know if we have time to do that part of it. But
we have plenty of time. It's if you have to get out of here.
Yeah, I do have to get out of here because my husband has to go to work.
I'm going to embrace the handmade. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so then what I would do is I just put the handle right over top of this seam.
Yeah.
In my work, I actually usually have the seam on the outside because I really like the statement that this is handmade and this is made out of a clay slab. But it's to each their own. So now we need to make the handle. And everybody's hands are different, and everybody holds a mug differently. Like Pete Pennell, who's a famous potter, he was saying like women have a certain way that they hold their mugs, which is like a 2-finger, like close up kind of, like that's what feels comfortable. And men usually are like right angle, all fingers. Yes.
I'm
like,
3-fingering it.
Yeah, you're 3-fingering it. Yeah. I usually
I 2-finger thumb on top. Right? Oh, it took me a while to get into that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Sorry, like that's actually how all my classes are. I can't help it. I just make I make a lot of bad jokes.
And I imagine it's funny when like the little old lady's like, I only think I can get 2 fingers in there.
Yeah, and then I just
Be
crack
like,
up. I just crack up, and then they don't understand. And I was like, "You guys are just awesome. You're making my night."
Noreen, I got my whole fist.
I'm fisting it.
So you use from the stuff we cut off, that's going to become our handle?
This is going to become our handle. Yeah.
Super.
Okay, so because it's already the same size,
Oh,
of
that
everything,
makes sense.
and we want it to be, enough for you to fist it. So, I'm going to just cut this down, and I'm going to use my little popsicle stick to give it a good size here.
Is it important that thickness is maintained and it's the same amount across the board, or could you have one part that's much thicker than another part?
Okay, so I mean, like in beginner classes, it depends on what you really are going for, because you could be really abstract, But if you want it to look really clean and professional, having consistent thickness is really important. Actually, when you start in school, like when I was going to school, they make you throw away your first 100 pieces that you throw on the wheel, because that's how you learn to have consistent thickness and you have muscle memory. So, so like having an even thickness is pretty important if you are trying to like make it look really professional. If you just don't care, you just don't care. It's
Sure.
fine. Okay, so like doing the handle, we could do like a bent handle, or we could roll 2 little balls and have like the traditional beer stein.
I like a
look.
bent handle.
A bent handle? Okay.
Yeah.
So when we do that, we are going to take this slab and we're just going to make like a D shape, kind of like that. And then we're going to slip and score and adhere it to the walls.
Okay.
So you have to, you can go towards the bottom or you can go more towards the top. It's up to you. That's something that you can choose. So I'm going to let you choose that.
Oh my God, that's tough to think of.
Yeah.
Towards the top.
Towards
I'm
the
a
top. Okay, a topper. All right. Are you a top or a bottom?
And let's show off the seam.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you want to show?
I wasn't going to go there, but
Yeah,
I'm glad we did.
I
Yeah.
did. I can't help it. I'm sorry, guys.
And remember, everyone, we're scoring first and then
Yes,
slipping.
We're gonna score and slip. Yeah.
So so for the other one, we scored where the 2 things meet, but this has got really 3 points of contact, right?
So we're actually okay. So I am going to just place the handle here, and if you like that,
yeah, that looks good.
So I want to look at it to make sure that we don't want our handle to be wonky like this.
Sure.
So you have to kind of eyeball it up, and then I'm going to make some lines where I'm going to slip and score. So here and here, and then right underneath those lines, I'm just going to mark it up just a little bit. I can see that. Okay, right here. And then I'm going to score the handle.
So just on the tips that are touching there.
Right. And then we just wipe it with the sponge. And then so I'm going to take and press the top in, lining it up, pressing. And then I'm coming down to the bottom. And I'm just pressing it in. So you want to make sure that you have good contact, and you're going to know that if it's adhered well is if you pull on it and it doesn't come off. It's obviously not going to hold any sort of weight right now. Yep. And everybody freaks out about that. They're like, is it attached well? I'm like, is it coming off when you pull on it? Then it's fine. But it's not like, don't try to grab it by this because it's just going to break. But
I love the fact that some of the texture is on there too.
Yeah.
Like it's like the wavies are on there. It's awesome.
That's kind of why I actually choose to like cut this a little longer, so that way we have that extra, and then everything looks like a cohesive piece. It's kind of like me being controlling.
Good, yeah, good move.
So other than putting a bottom on this is what it would come out to be. You would take this, I'm going to leave the PVC pipe in there so I don't lose the shape when I bring it home, but you're going to pull this out, pull the paper out, wipe the rim, wipe the bottom, and then you put your initials on the bottom.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so how long does this end up getting fired in stages?
So I have to let it dry completely until it's bone dry, and then you put it in the kiln. If you don't let it get to bone dry, it will explode in the kiln because all those water molecules like boil, and then it causes it to explode. So then I let it get bone dry. I fire it, which is called a bisque firing. That's to a low temperature. And then I will glaze it, underglaze and glaze it. And then I put it back in the kiln at a higher temperature. So the first time I fire it, it's to cone 06. And then the glaze firing is cone 6.
Cone 06 and then cone 6.
Right. There's quite a bit
Like
of a difference.
DEFCON like level you
Yes.
got out there.
Yeah, DEFCON 5. Yeah.
Mom, what are we at? We're at cone 6. Cone 6, everyone.
So when it is bone dry, I mean, does it feel like solid? Like it's not like it's
super brittle.
It's
It's
brittle,
like very like because I have to go out to the shop to go fire. So when I'm bringing these pieces out there, especially in the winter time, I'm totally terrified. Like things will break if I'm not careful. So I use my server skills and I just gingerly place everything. You have to be really careful because it will just crumble.
And is firing making it stronger then?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, because it actually so there's a glass former that's in the clay called silica, and so when you heat silica up and it melts, it becomes glass, and that's what becomes hard. Yeah.
Do you ever roll like sand or anything else on the outside of this, or would that just become so?
It would become gritty. It's not going to melt. We actually use some sand in silica. Sand is a type of silica that you can use. You can put sand in your clay to have more texture to it. Like some people like that. There's a million types of clay. You can buy your clay commercially, or you can make it in a big cement mixer and buy all the ingredients, which is what I learned to do when I went to MSUM. And I actually really like it. It just feels like you're manly baking, like you're using a cement mixer and I don't know.
So what about the clay that's underneath our feet, like in the Red River Valley?
So,
is that a moldable clay?
Sometimes, if you dig and you find a good pocket of good clay, it has to have certain components to it to be able to be fireable. But yeah, there's people that harvest clay from the earth and use it, but you'd have to do some testing to do that. Yeah.
And you just kind of make a little mini mug and
Yeah,
put it
you
in
just
there and
roll out a slab and you just test it just to see if it works.
Do you want people to bring you chunks of clay if they get them? No,
Nope, I don't.
What
No.
about a kid's modeling clay?
No, that'll melt.
For sure.
No, for sure. Yeah, that's not the same. It's more of a plastic base than it is a clay base. Yeah.
Does this suck the moisture out of your hands or anything?
Yeah, I used
so
to have
are you
really
always
pretty-
lotioning?
Yeah, I used to have really pretty hands. Everybody would always comment on how pretty my hands are, and now they're old grimace hands. I don't know, the Crypt Keeper's hands. That's what I've got now. So,
You should be playing an organ in a basement somewhere.
yeah, that's what my future looks like. So,
So, and at this point, I just wait for you to tell me it's done. What's the turnaround on something like this, especially when you're busy? I imagine this is a very busy season.
It's been really hard for me to I have been trying to say it because I don't want people to wait forever. But my kiln isn't huge, so I can only fit so many projects in the kiln at a time. So it has been about a month, and that's kind of realistic. 2 to 3 weeks is what I try to get it done in, but it might be longer.
So if you want to have something ready for Valentine's Day,
we should be doing it now.
Right now. So
Right now.
this is what I can give my wife on Valentine's Day.
It's really funny that you speak of Valentine's Day because I'm doing an anti-Valentine's Day class, which I was telling Tucker about. So I am going to do a class called Pricks and Pints at Front Street Tap Room. So I'm pre-making all these penises and vulvas that people can come in and paint.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that they get to take it away right then and there.
Because I was, no joke, at the beginning, I was like, I wonder if I said a penis handle. If
I've
that'd
had
be
people
a
make
weird
that.
thing.
No, I've had
for
a
her.
lot of people make
Really?
that, and they think it's so funny, and I think it's so funny, and
Yeah, why not, right?
there's a lot of laughter happening.
Isn't it nice that we're getting to a point where we can say the word penis and not everyone in the room, you don't hear something break on the side.
Podcasts aren't FCC regulated.
Right. Well, and you can say penis on the radio too.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, you can't say things like dick.
Well,
you can't say
isn't
that?
that the famous Howard Stern test where the context is what matters for
Right.
some words?
So he was
Yeah.
doing
say-
they were playing the match game and it was blank willow and he goes pussy. I wrote pussy. I got a big pussy and blank a doodle doo and he figured out, but I think he still got I think still got
Get
dinged
dinged.
for that one.
It's funny because my kids, like we have a very loose language house, and like we talk about penises and all of those things, and like some of my daycare kids are like, and I was like, just words. They're just words.
I loved hearing adults say words that I knew we were not allowed to say when I was a kid. Like, and I would, bite my lip and like look at another person and be like, did you hear it too? Did you hear it too?
Oh, my middle child, she, like, it's kind of bad because she, they say they have potty mouths. I won't lie. They have
Sure.
potty mouths.
Rip
and
the paint right off a barn, right?
Yes, basically. And like, so my mom told me, she was watching the kids, and my one daughter came out and she's like, Amelia called me an effing shithole. and my mom was just doubled over with laughter. She's like, aren't you going to do something? She called me an effing shithole. Like, so seriously, like,
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know what to do. Like,
You're like, were you being an effing shithole?
Yeah, were you being an effing shithole? I don't know.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
And you know what? You're gonna have well-adjusted human beings.
I hope so.
Because if they're not held under this like, ooh, these words have got this weird power over you, and they're
Yeah. It is hard, like, because when she calls me an effing shithole, like, then I have to take action, because if that happens out in public, like, it just is harder. I don't know. Like, it's just not okay that you, like, demean somebody in public like that, I guess. So,
well, that's the other power of words, right? There's a time and a place for
right.
words.
Yeah, you can say it all you want at home. That's fine. But you're not going to say it in front of a bunch of other people, which, I mean, what does that say about, like, is that the correct way to think? Like, if I'm allowing them to say it at home, why can't they say it? Like, maybe that's mixed messages, and I have to rethink that. But
That's a very Midwestern thing of you to be like, this is a shared space. But it's true. It's like, it's why when I'm at home, I don't mind farting anywhere in my house, but like, I'm not going to be in an elevator and like,
oh my God.
because there's just decorum.
I'm going to say,
I think that kind of depends on who's in the elevator with you, JJ.
Yeah.
I've been with you in elevators a couple of times where it was just
My-
the two of us.
But have I ever farted in an elevator?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
You must have.
No,
There's
I don't
no
think
way
so.
you
in an
haven't.
elevator
because
I do regularly.
once. Yeah.
because it closes and then someone else is going to get in there and they're going to go, whoa!
You know
and they
what?
might have to go up 18 floors.
When I was pregnant with my second child, I worked at a hospital, and there was this really hot doctor, and I was riding the elevator, and pregnancy farts are the worst farts in the world, like worse than dog farts. And I totally farted in the elevator, and then the doors open, and then the hot guy got in, and I was like, there's nobody to blame this on but me. Like, I was like, I don't know. I don't know.
Baby did it.
Yeah, it wasn't me.
You never see that on Grey's Anatomy, though.
You
like,
never
that's
do.
never a plot point.
Like another way to look at McSteamy. Like
Yeah.
it was. I just had a McSteamy. I don't know.
Well, I think this is where we wrap this thing up after, elevator farts. Also, I want to just comment on the fact that, like, the newspaper we're doing this on is ultra Midwestern. We've got the, the want ads in the back. There's a meat raffle ad going on here. And there's American flags in, two things here already?
Yeah.
So... you picked the right paper.
You know what I usually try to. There's the obituaries too.
Oh, yeah,
which
yeah.
is nice. But I generally try to use High Plains readers, like the leftovers.
Mm-hmm.
Like I consciously do that because I want people to like think about the High Plains reader. I guess
That's a good move.
Yeah, I
you
don't
should
know.
get them to sponsor you.
Well,
in this.
I love Raul and John Strand, so yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, why not, right?
I'm gonna reach out to you guys.
This is a new type of advertising.
yeah.
Actually, here's a business idea for you.
Garbage advertising.
Right.
'cause-
Yeah, exactly. You say, like, listen, this paper, it's already done, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's
second
already,
chance.
yeah, you get another life for it, and you just give me all the papers for free, and then give me like $5.
I'm pretty sure the form includes this in their pitch when they sell advertising.
Yeah.
Oh, really? You
Is
can
that-
use this as a craft
Well,
paper.
it's they'll see it when it comes out, and then they'll see it when they're making clay beer steins.
Yes. Oh my God.
Double dip.
I'm reaching out to all of them.
Yeah, like when you go to an auto store and you're like, listen, they'll see it. They'll see it while they're reading it on the toilet, and they'll see it when they're making mugs, and they'll see it when they're covering their girlfriend's head while they're walking in the rain. And be like, all right, enough. I'll buy an ad.
I'm buying.
Fine. Amber, if people want to find you online or want to get involved in one of your classes, where are they going to find you?
I have a website. It's MidwestMudCeramics.com. A lot of people find me on Facebook, just Midwest Mud.
And you're available for private events.
I totally am. I love doing private. Actually, the Pricks and Pints thing is actually a motivation to do bachelorette parties.
Ooh.
Like I love doing private parties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, thank you very much, and I can't wait to see this mug, and thank you for getting me to embrace the fact that, like, it shouldn't be perfect. It should be unique.
The Wabi Sabi. Yeah.
The Wabi Sabi.
Yeah.
So there's your episode title right there. All right, thanks, Amber.
Yep. Thanks.
A huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring this podcast. Folks, if you're looking to buy or sell a home, contact Natalie Deutsch today, because Natalie Deutsch is not only a previous podcast guest, she's somebody who's going to care enough to sell your property for top dollar. She's also going to find you the best price possible if you're purchasing a new home. Last year, on average, Natalie earned her clients $4,000 over list price on their homes and sold them faster than the market average. On average, Natalie's selling a home every 3.74 days. That's 2 homes a week. Those numbers don't lie. Find out why Natalie is one of the top agents in this entire market. Get a hold of her today, Natalie at HatchRealtyFM.com. You can also call 701-388-9338 or go on to livefargomoorhead.com. That's livefargomoorhead.com. Read all of her amazing reviews and then listen to her episode of JJ Meets World. Thanks again to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode of JJ Meets World and would like to help us continue to produce 2 new episodes every week, you can donate to our Patreon. Check out patreon.com/JJ Meets World and donate today. Even as little as $1 a month can go a long way. Visit our website at www.jjmeetsworld.com or hit up our social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the sites the kids are using these days. If you'd like to stay up to date on new episodes of JJ Meets World, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you consume the podcast that you love. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by checking out www.moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, go to linebenders.com, and you can find direct contact info for JJ. What you don't see in this episode is at one point, Amber reaches out and holds my hand, and that was the most anxiety I had during this whole thing, because I was like, my hand's dirty, her hand's dirty, we can't hold dirty hands.